Cool, Brian. Good to see you, man. Nice to be back here with you again. We did Brian's podcast a little while ago, Hit of Happiness, and I really enjoyed how he thinks about happiness. It's a subject that comes up a lot for guys in Men's Group, and so I was excited to have Brian on the Men's Group podcast. Brian, I'd love for you to start by introducing yourself and share a little bit about happiness.
Yeah, so Sean, thank you so much for having me here. And I loved having you on my podcast as well, just because you're such an authentic human who's really willing to go deep on any topic. And I think that's such an important part of the happiness journey. So hello, Men's Group community. My name is Brian Dubow. I am a certified happiness trainer. You probably don't hear that too often. So what that means is that I spent a year taking a deep dive into the science of happiness. It was at a point in my life where I was doing the things that society told me would make me happy, getting money, more power, more success. Yet in reality, I was burning out and not in alignment with myself. And so I spent a year studying under Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, who is a professor at Harvard in positive psychology and leadership and one of the founders of the science of happiness. And it really opened my eyes to what actually makes us happy versus what we think makes us happy. And I started, experimenting with myself in terms of meditating, journaling, exercise, meaningful relationships, doing the things that we all know make us happy, but we don't do naturally, and building habits around those things. So with that, I really changed. I became a much happier person. And to quote Sean, I saw that happiness is an inside job. That's a quote from him on my podcast.
Great.
And from there, I started coaching people on happiness, which led to me starting my blog, my podcast, and I also do corporate consulting as well. So that I am the founder of the Hit of Happiness community, which if you're interested in happiness, feel free to come check it out at hitofhappiness.com.
Yeah, and again, I love how you think about happiness. Like I liked that you studied under a doctor, like a well-respected doctor who's leading some of the research in that. That's fantastic, man.
Yeah, I think what I've seen on my happiness journey, and especially as I've become a teacher in this space, is that everyone is looking for happiness. It's kind of everyone's end game. Why do we have jobs? So that we can make money, so that we can be happier, so we can find purpose, so that we can be happy. Why are we on this podcast? Because we think we'll connect, which will make us happy. Everything we do in life is driven by a desire to be happy. So it piques everyone's interest, which is awesome, because whenever I tell people I'm a certified happiness trainer, they have a million questions for me, and it's almost like a social lubricant to skip the small talk. But at the same time, no one really knows where to start, because it's such a broad concept. And I've found that on my journey, that to be able to take such a broad concept as the term happiness, which people just think of a smiley face and wish it were them, and make it more of, an approachable concept. This is what you can do on a daily basis, a weekly basis. This is how you identify your superpower. This is how you identify your weakest link. And I'm happy to dive a little bit deeper into the science and the framework. I think it really helps when people can see a path forward, as opposed to when you want to be happy, but you don't know where to start, you're just spinning. And that's a tough place to be.
Yeah, it definitely is. And a lot of people are in that place. I'd say the majority of people get stuck on those ruts from time to time. And yeah, I'm really excited to dig into the framework of that. But first, as a happiness coach, what does happiness mean to you? Like, as you started studying under this doctor and learning what happiness, the research says happiness is, how did you find it?
I think the biggest thing for me is also the cliche that the journey is the destination, because I think our society, and I guess I'm talking about American, Canadian society, really focuses on hitting benchmarks. We need to get that promotion and then we'll be happy. We need to get that house with the big backyard and then we'll be happy. We need to, anything, so we all are chasing these benchmarks and then we hit them And then we tend to be disappointed and we're wondering why we aren't happy because society tells us that when we get all those things, we will be happy. So instead of focusing on setting goals that we think will make us happy, it's about setting goals that will set us off on a journey that will be the most fulfilling. So I have found in my life that the purpose of goals is not about hitting the goals, but more so to liberate us into the present and allow us to be here now while also growing into who we want to be. So think of your role models. Think of, anyone you'd want to be 10 years from now. What are they doing? They did not get there overnight. They got there through a process, set a goal that aligns with, the crazy things that they've done, and go on that journey and see where it takes you and see who you become. Because the truth about happiness is just the present. It's being here now. And that is really, really, really hard to do in today's day and age where we have social media, we have the news, and our minds are constantly these monkey balls going in every direction. And the truth is that when you're stuck in the past, you're setting yourself up for depression. You're really reflecting on the way things were and comparing yourself to that. When you're stuck in the future or thinking about the future, you're setting yourself up for anxiety in that you're worried about the way things are going to play out, when most of that is not even in your control anyway. And in reality, we can only control what we can control. And if we can let go of everything else, we're going to be in a much better space. So the science of happiness is really all about helping you become more present. And, maybe I know you're a surfer. When you're on that wave, you're probably fully in that state of flow, because if your mind's in the future, you're going to get pummeled by that wave. Yeah. So finding those activities that allow you to be present, as well as setting up your life so that you are on a journey that is allowing you to grow into the person you want to be. I would say that's the two sides of it that will really allow you to thrive the most. And I mean, I can go into more detail in terms of being present. Sure, I want to be present. That's not easy. That's not like a flip switch where it's like, I'm going to be present now. I did it. I'm happy. That's where things like exercise come into play. That's where things like meditating come into play. That's where journaling, that's where, doing the things that you enjoy doing make you happy, So I'll stop there to see if you have any questions, but
no,
I
don't really have any questions about that, because I feel like that is a fantastic summary of happiness and the things that can make people happy. I've seen in MensGroup that a lot of people get stuck in the past and get stuck reflecting on history, stuff that's happened. And you just mentioned that, it's hard to be happy when you're stuck in the past. Have you seen any, because humans have such a hard time letting go, it seems like at times, have you seen anything else help to bring people from the past to the present where happiness resides?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing about the past is that it's the past. It's already over. There's nothing we can do about it. Yet we get stuck in this moment, and I used the word earlier, you're spinning because you're so stuck in the past that you're not moving forward at all. So what I've found, especially in the people I coach, is that in order to get out of the past, you need to have something excited to look forward to in the future. So it's really about, at its most basic level, having hope. The hope is the cure, in my opinion, to an extent, to the beginning of the cure to depression, because you believe that there is a possible path forward. There is a positive future for you. So give people something that excites them. And, this can happen in a single coaching session where people go from spinning to move, you can move around their energy to the point where all of a sudden they have a new goal. They have something that they're very excited about that they could see could potentially change their life, change their entire outlook. And sometimes it's as simple as, I'm going to sign up for a 10K or a marathon. Sometimes it's, I am going to change my career. And it also is about starting small, because when you're spinning, your chances are you aren't doing a lot. You're in this state of survival, there's, versus a thriving state. So when you're in the state of survival, it's kind of, you're really just trying to make it to the next day. You're trying to do your minimum at work. You're trying to get your food in your body. You're trying to just make it to tomorrow. So you have to start small. I would say when we try to bite off too much at once, we're setting ourselves up for failure for sure. But if if you're in a career you hate, or you're, recovering from a relationship you hate, start with a goal that's attainable. If it's a relationship, make yourself go on one date a month. Something to just get you back in motion. And there's a quote from Albert Einstein. It's something along the lines of, when you stop, life is like riding a bicycle. When you stop pedaling, you tip over. So with life, you just have to keep pedaling. Once you stop pedaling, you tip over, and you got to find ways to stay in motion. And I believe in taking time to reflect, but if you're stopping, make sure you're reflecting. Don't stop to go backwards.
Totally. And do you have any other examples of like goals people could set? Like I love that one you just shared, but are there other examples of goals that you could share that would be good examples of like something that can get them started that's approachable,
So this might be a good time to dive into the framework.
Yeah, great.
Because I think that would help just frame the way we talk about the various goals people can set. So in terms of getting people back in motion, I help people identify what their weakest link is. And even though happiness is definitely about leaning into our superpowers, unhappiness, or when we're in that survival mode, is about mitigating your weakest link, because that tends to be the thing that is occupying the most space in your head. And, if you're always thinking about this relationship or this, your physical health, whatever that is, that's stopping you from being happy, because that is stopping you from being present. So, I use a 5-dimension framework, and I learned this from Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, but I call it our SPHIRE. So SPHIRE is defined as the peak of a mountain, or you can think of it as the peak of yourself. But it's also an acronym, and it is the 5 dimensions of our happiness or well-being. So the first one, S, is our spiritual well-being. The second one, P, is our physical well-being. The third one, I, is our intellectual well-being. The fourth, relational well-being. And the fifth, emotional well-being. So spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional. And we're only as strong as our weakest link. So when I coach people, it's helping them identify what is your weakest link. Let's go through each of these dimensions. Let's break it down even on a scale of 1 to 10. And honestly, Sean, I'd actually love to go through this exercise with you just so people can think through it on their own, but help people identify what is your weakest link. And then from there, we come up with actionable steps you can take on a weekly and even daily basis so that you can see yourself making progress. Because the truth is that mood follows action. So when you start doing things, you start feeling better. So find things you can do on a daily basis that all of a sudden make you feel like, oh wait, I am back to the guy who goes on dates, or I am back to the guy who exercises. Am I a runner again? How did this happen? These things happen overnight through your actions. So I guess I'll quickly define how I see the 5 dimensions. And then I'd love you to think about what is your weakest link, and then we can come up with a way to address it. So spiritual is your sense of purpose or meaning. So really your reason to get up in the morning. And if you feel like you have a reason to get up in the morning. Physical is a combination. I'm a big acronym guy.
I can tell.
So
I like that.
I see that as
I like acronym guys. Makes it easier for me to digest.
Makes it easier to remember. So that's our NEST, and NEST stands for nutrition, exercise, sleep, and touch. So, nutrition, what we eat; exercise, getting your body moving every day; sleep, you know what sleep is, and touch is actually physical human touch. That is actually a proven need of ours to be happy. And there were even studies that have shown that babies that are held more by their parents are tend to be happier and develop in a more natural way as they get older. So, at our age, Sean, it's probably more about, sex or, hugging friends, whatever.
Or just
but
intimacy with your
believe it or
partner,
not,
just
that.
cuddling with your partner or whatever. Yeah.
Intimacy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's physical. Intellectual is how often you find yourself in a state of flow. So, being fully in the moment, and that's meeting your interests with the right amount of challenge. So a lot of people don't feel intellectually driven because maybe they're interested in their work, but it's not challenging them. Or their work could be very challenging, but they have no interest in them. So intellectual is finding that balance of the two. And that also doesn't have to be your work. That could be a hobby that you do. People enter a state of flow in golf or in basketball, when you see LeBron with the hot hand, or in reading, whatever it is. So then relational would be your ability. Are you surrounded with people that allow you to be the most authentic version of yourself? Are you an imposter to try to fit in, or are you truly able to be yourself? And are the people around you helping you be a better version of yourself? So, there have been studies that have shown that we are the combination of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So if you're hanging out with people that are bringing you down, that's probably not that healthy. I would almost try to level up and surround yourself with people that you aspire to be like, or that have traits that you look up to. And then finally, emotional is really just giving yourself permission to be human. And as humans, we're not going to be happy all the time. I think that's one of the most important lessons of the happiness journey, is that being happy is not about always being happy. It's about being resilient and how we internally deal with the tough times. So if something bad happens to you, that's okay. And you're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to be even depressed if you need to be. But it's about, how are you going to respond to that going forward? What are you going to do about it? Are you going to sulk in your misery, or are you going to go get coffee with that person that always uplifts you? Or are you going to go for a run, or do the things that are scientifically proven to make us happy? And the truth is also that all emotions come from the same place. So if you are not letting the negative emotions flow through you, and this is actually a problem that I used to have, where I just tried to be positive all the time. No matter what I was going through, keep a smile on my face, and I'm living my best life, and everyone needs to know that. But if we don't let our negative emotions flow through us, we can't also let our positive emotions flow through us. They're kind of, at a bottleneck. So it's about being real with yourself, and whatever you're feeling, acknowledge that, talk to other people about that, journal through that, but move forward and do something about it. And don't let yourself sit there without being in motion. Get back in motion, do something about it. So that is our 5 dimensions. And I think that's, thus far on my happiness journey, I found that to be the best way to help make happiness a more tangible concept for people to think about. So I'd love, if you could tell me what you would say is your weakest link right now, and then we can talk through ideas for what may make sense for your path forward.
Yeah, I appreciate you reflecting this back to me, and I'm happy to be an example, especially today, because today's a low day for me. I'm typically somebody who's upbeat and default. I have a pretty buoyant emotional setup, I tend to bob back up to the surface. But today I feel low, and it's for 2 specific reasons. It's due to an injury, so I have been unable to surf. And also relationally, we moved to a new town, and it's been more challenging to make friends here than we expected. So spiritually, I feel my purpose is in line with MensGroup. I feel very purposeful with that. I look forward to working on it every day, which is a gift. Physically, I feel quite low. That's probably the area I'm going to say I want to work on, but I'll roll through the others. Intellectually, I'm learning to surf again. So I feel like intellectually there's a lot of challenge with work, which I'm interested in, entrepreneurship, and then also with surfing. Relationally, I have a great MensGroup, great group of guys around me that I get to talk to whenever, and they're super supportive. And I can message on a day like this. I don't have that here yet in this town, but I do have fantastic people around me. Emotional, permission to be human. Yeah, definitely. I've come a long way. Similar to you, with I have to be happy all the time, because that's kind of what the media, shows me. Is almost like an anxious happiness that I was chasing. Like, oh, this is the best day ever. It's like, no, there's a lot of days that aren't the best day ever, And so I feel like I'm in a good place with my emotional understanding with regards to happiness. My emotions are low today, but I think that's because of the physical. So I'd probably say physical, because I was really excited to surf, and I was surfing every day, and I was finding a lot of purpose and meaning in that. And it was a pursuit that I really enjoyed. And I got my shoulder blades started to get inflamed, and I must have strained it or sprained it or tore something, because it's just like not getting better. And then that bums me out, because that was my one outlet, especially not having friends here. I just go surf every day, and I was meeting people that way. So yeah, just feeling a little low about that I just bought all this gear, and I'm just investing in training and all these tools to help me become a better surfer. And I was getting excited about that, watching YouTube videos. And now it's like, oh, I just need to rest for another 2 weeks probably before I can get back in the water again. So that's got me kind of down.
Thank you for sharing, first of all, that your ability to express that, and just the fact that you are having a not so hot day shows how real you are on your emotional front, which is a beautiful thing. And again, speaking to being the leader of a men's group, I think that's the hardest one for men, because when you talk to men, they tend to, the first question, how are you doing? Their response is just, good, you. It's never, today's actually a not so hot day, and here's why. Yeah. So I think it's awesome that as the leader of this community, you're willing to be expressive on that front. And thank you so much for sharing.
There's one other thing I forgot to mention as well. Part 2 is that I'm just feeling headachy and kind of symptomy from my chronic health stuff. That's flared up a little bit. So I think that's partly, like, chemically I might be feeling down, because there's stuff going on in my body. I just feel like achy in my neck, and, kind of inflamed and just kind of hot and uncomfortable. So, there's that as well, which is just part of the journey for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of life, unfortunately. But so with the physical side, and it sounds like you miss first of all, exercise is scientifically proven to make us happier, because it releases chemicals in our brains. There's lots of happy chemicals. There's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. Every time you exercise, endorphins are released, and you will feel better. There's very few people that will tell you they feel worse after exercising. But the idea of going to exercise doesn't always sound fun. So it sounds like your long-term goal is to be a better surfer. You want to be the best possible surfer.
Yeah, just spend time in the ocean surfing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Unfortunately, you're probably 2+ weeks away from getting back on the board. But what are specific muscles that might be useful to help you become that better surfer? So I think we should think of it as surfing is your North Star. That's what we want to get to. We want to get to the point where you are the guy carving the biggest waves on the beach, and everyone's dapping you up saying, I want to be more like Sean, and that covers the relationship issues too. Yeah. But you're not there yet, and we want to get there. So what is the small step we can start with? And again, I'm not that familiar with surfing. I do live in LA now. I did buy a board. I've used it about 3 times. I'm very bad. So I'm not the right person to give you advice on surfing, but maybe you can give me some advice on, if I was in your situation, what exercise could I be doing to really help me when my shoulder is fixed? Is it squats? Is it maybe some running? Is it building endurance, HIIT workouts?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been doing some of this. So it's practicing pop-ups, just like popping up off the board, because that's a very specific burpee kind of movement. So, and given that I just moved here and just started surfing again, I'm quite weak in my upper body. So I've been doing those, like practicing pop-ups. I just ordered the surf skate so I can practice some of the movements of surfing and get better in like a tennis court, since you don't get much time on a wave. That's a great way to train. I could just go hang out at the beach and watch waves and just like get my vision going again, because that takes time to come back, being able to see when waves are going to come. Also, the opportunity to build a support network here in this new town physios, osteos, whatever, to help me recover from these kinds of things, because I seem to consistently deal with neck issues, shoulder issues, so it's like, I'm sure there's some massage therapist or physio that could help me get better faster. So building those resources for future episodes like this.
Okay. So it sounds like it's, in some ways, this is a gift because you're given the time to work on the things that help build the foundation for you as a future surfer.
Yeah, and it's also a gift because of work. Like MensGroup is at a point where we're building some new stuff, and it was requiring a lot of my energy right now. So, if I was really surfing twice a day, I wouldn't have not much capacity for work. So, it's good for that too.
That's awesome. So now you see it as an opportunity, and now why don't we commit to something you're going to do over the course of the next week? And, based off of what I've heard, you might want to spend 1 or 2 mornings on the beach visioning what it'll look like when you do feel better. Because actually, when you visualize your body getting better, there have been studies that have shown that you get better faster, which is crazy. Yeah. Maybe you want to go to group workouts that focus on, the push-up-esque process that you need for standing up on a surfboard. Are there any classes in your new city where you also would have the opportunity to meet people?
Yeah, this is a very small town, so there actually aren't a lot, which is what's compounding this problem, actually, because like I got here, I had a couple acquaintances here that I thought were going to turn into friends. Turns out they don't have a lot of capacity right now, so I feel like I'm feeling a little sad about that. And then because of I don't have an activity for after work that I'd usually do, and then I'm just sitting around feeling sorry for myself. So yeah, maybe there is a town that's like half an hour away that has yoga and more of those things that I could go hit up, or at the very least, seek out, or just do more dog walks and more like, activities around town, bump into people that way.
Is there a running club in your town?
There is not. No.
It's a very small town. Got it.
Very small town, very small surf town that revolves around the ocean. But there is a spearfishing community. That's something I've wanted to get into, and I have all the gear for. So there are other activities that are somewhat related to surfing to do with the ocean, but like don't involve, this muscle per se that I could go do today and with people.
Okay, so what I've heard over the course of the last 10 minutes is that there are a lot of things you can do, and probably part of the challenge is that you've really just been focusing on what you can't do.
Oh yeah,
and that's
totally.
surfing.
Yeah.
You've been focusing on the injury. If we can focus on all the other things you can do, I would think that will excite you and get you back in motion and doing those things. And you never know when you're doing things where that leads. And it's easy to sit in our apartments and be like, my life sucks. You never know what the next conversation, and whether that's someone in your fishing club, whether that's someone you meet in yoga 30 minutes away, you never know who you meet that might change your life. So again, part of what I am here to do as a coach is to get you back into motion and just doing things. And once you're in motion, life becomes easier. Things just start to happen, and it's easier to stay in motion. You build momentum where you want to go out and go do these things because you're excited about the possibilities. And the truth about life is that there's infinite possibilities, but that's really, really, really hard to see when you're in survival mode. Once you can see life with a different lens, see, the glass half full per se, or just be grateful that you have a glass at all, you almost become limitless to an extent because you're able to see all the possibilities, and there are infinite possibilities in life. A lot of people, even with their careers, think there's only 4 options. I can be a lawyer, accountant, doctor, finance guy, and that's what society tells you. But you could be the head of MensGroup. That was not on the script 10 years ago, I'm sure.
No, I didn't know that was possible, nor did I even want to be that guy. Like, I was just open to where life wanted to push me. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, interesting.
Right. So was this exercise helpful at all, just to get you to think through other possibilities and really paths that you can lean into in the meantime?
Yeah, very much, actually. Yeah, it affirms some of the things I was already doing, and it opened my eyes to other things that I could be doing quite a bit more, like the spearfishing, which I'm very excited about. I could go do that today, even with this injury, and that could be a good way to meet friends as well. So yeah, I think that's great. I have one follow-up question for you. And
Please.
This gets asked in MensGroup quite a bit. Okay, so we're setting goals, we're focusing on what we can do. That's positive. That is an attitude towards happiness. What do you do in the meantime, or what is the balance of, because I'm still feeling a little sad about this friendship that basically I created a fantasy around what it would be, and it's turned out not to be that. I feel a little disappointed, a little rejected about that. And also, I feel quite a bit of physical pain right now in my neck and my head and stuff. So like, how do you do this, focus on what I can do, and while still honoring my physical experience and some of the things I'm feeling? What's the balance there?
So the balance is relativity, where I could be in theory, much worse neck pain than you are, but I am better than yesterday. And for that reason, I am happier than you, because perception becomes reality, and how I perceive myself doing, the track that I perceive myself on is what's real to me. And you could make another argument that nothing is real. We could live in the Matrix.
Yeah, it's all simulation. Elon Musk. Yeah.
It's all a simulation here. But in your particular simulation, you may perceive yourself as getting worse, and that's causing you a lot more anxiety than me, who might be in a much worse place, but I'm getting better. So again, it's really about creating that hope and seeing yourself as having a path forward, a path that excites you. And that's different for everyone. I'm not here to tell you the way to fix that is to go get acupuncture, go, watch a YouTube video. But I am here to tell you that once you start taking action that is in support of the issue, you will start feeling better about the issue, because it is not as bad as it once was.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you used the key word there, which is perception. And that's something that I've seen a lot of the great mentors that I look up to, individuals who are very resilient, is they really focus on what is their perception right now. My perception is I can't, like you said, focus on what I can't do. It's about shifting perception to where the positive is, where the opportunity is, where the gift is in the circumstance. And so what you're suggesting here actually models some of the greatest thinkers that I've ever come across, and some of the most successful people of all time, who believe that there's always some opportunity in any obstacle, which is summarized in a great book actually called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Yeah, it's a little easy read.
I know Ryan Holiday. I haven't read the book, but I love his stoicism.
Yeah. That book just takes all these examples from old history, from today, of the most successful people, world leaders, athletes, celebrities, successful people financially. They all have this intrinsic ability to shift their perception when adversity comes in, to be able to then perceive, to then look and focus on what is the opportunity, what can I do, what's the good that could come from this.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that, and that we in today's day and age run away from challenging things. I think we tend to lean into instant gratification because our cell phones have allowed for that. And, it's now very easy to click a couple buttons and dinner can be at your door in 30 minutes. But the reality is that we're going to be happier when we are growing, and growing comes through challenging experiences. It's kind of like when you go to the gym, you eventually start increasing your weights because you want your muscles to get bigger. If you do the same thing every day, it becomes easy. So if you want to grow on a mental capacity, you need to start doing harder and harder things. And we naturally run away from those things because we don't want to be uncomfortable. But I think some of the most successful people in this world have reframed that to getting comfortable being uncomfortable and leaning into the thing that will cause them to grow the most, not the thing that will be the easiest for them, because they know that will help them become the person they want to become. And there's ultra marathoners out there who can't wait to the point in their 100-mile race where they enter the pain cave, because that's when they start, chiseling away at their brain and getting to know themselves that much better. So I think the more we can think about how can I get into these states that are forcing me to challenge the way I perceive the world and forcing me to grow in various ways, the more fulfilling life will be. And I guess that is where it may be worth separating a concept like pleasure from a concept like happiness. And that, when someone's at mile 70 of an ultra marathon, they're probably not feeling much pleasure. They're probably feeling quite terrible, but they're probably en route to one of the happiest moments of their life when they finish that race. So it's not always about just seeking that pleasure or the thing that gives you that quick dopamine hit. It's about, again, the growth. The more we can grow into who we're meant to be and become the most authentic version of ourselves, which comes through a lot of work, life is cool. Life is a fun place when you're there.
It is. Yeah, it feels good. I love that you made that distinction between happiness and pleasure, because as we mentioned earlier, my definition of happiness when I was younger was somewhat immature. It was like an anxious happiness, like something I had to chase, something I had to continually prop up with pleasure, And I think a lot of people, especially in today's society, get pushed towards that. Oh, happiness is found, at the best night at the nightclub, or like achieving this goal, or being with this kind of beautiful person, or, even just eating shitty food or whatever, and I, in my journey, I've come to understand happiness more as like a good grounded contentment than like a pleasure, so I see these t-shirts like good days only or good vibes only, and I'm like, oh man, you're just that's not only is that not possible, it's kind of setting you up for failure. So I love that. That distinction.
Yeah. And I guess one thing I try to help people see is that it's not about being happy all the time. It's about, when you get yourself back in motion, maybe at the end of 6 months, you're 10% happier. At the end of the year, maybe you're 15% happier as a culmination of all of your dimensions. And, some will go up, some will go down. But on average, you've calloused your mind a little bit so you can handle more of whatever happens to you.
I like it. Calloused, cauterized. Funny words. Cauterize your mind. Yeah, that's interesting. And so how can you... So for me, I know that when that this stuff's working, when I just... I feel and get enjoyment and contentment out of simple things. Just like I'm content with my life as it is, like nothing needs to change. I notice the birds in the trees. What else? What does that look like for you? How do you know when you're actually achieving that 10% more happiness after a few months or whatever it might be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do a lot of reflection and a lot of journaling, and I actually have come up with a scale for myself of really quantifying each dimension of my happiness on a sometimes month or every other month to really see where I stand. And one thing that I think is worth noting is that it's often just as valuable to know what I'm doing and what my habits are at good times as it is at bad times, because often when we're in those bad times, we don't know what we're not doing, and to be able to, or what changed, because our minds are just more narrow. We're not thinking about the big picture. We're really just honed in on the shoulder or whatever else. So to be able to look back on what you were doing, what your habits were on when you, those months where you were thriving, and see, oh, I stopped meditating. I don't know how that happened. Or, oh, I stopped hanging out with this friend every Wednesday night for our tennis practices. Or I stopped, going to this session of MensGroup. I think that can be very valuable to get back into understanding what habits are positive for you and what habits are negative for you. So I definitely am very mindful about journaling. I go through phases where it's every day. I go through phases where it's 3 days a week. But just to keep track of on a whole, where are my emotions in a given day? What's going well, what's not, what made me happy, what did not, what made me uncomfortable, what made me anxious, trying to take something out of that, at the end of every month, looking back a little bit, giving myself, how'd I do this month? And at the end of every year, being able to say, this year was better than last year, no question. And now beyond that, I meditate every single day because that's a habit and I can see the benefits of that. And success builds upon itself, and that when you see something's working, and I guess it's very important to take a step back and identify what success looks like for you. Because happiness is this broad word. We all want to be happy, but why do I want to be happy? I want to be happy so that I can A, be as present as possible, B, be as energized as possible when I want to be energized. And I guess a distinction with an energized is I don't want to be 70% of myself 100% of the time. I want to be 100% of myself 70% of the time. So when I want to be this energized person that can offer my energy to other people to help them, I want to optimize that. And I want to also, and this is some people have different thoughts on this word, but I want to self-actualize. I want to become all that I was meant to be. So given that these are the three things that I really care about, how are my actions at any given point supporting that? Am I getting closer to that? And getting closer to that, again, isn't an overnight process. It's building small habits into your life and experimenting to see if they are helping or hurting, reflecting on that. And if they are, keep doing that. If they're not, stop it and do something else. So another thing that's worth noting is that life is a constant experiment. When we stop experimenting, we stop living because we stop growing. So do you have a theory about something that may help you? One of mine, for example, this year was I stopped drinking coffee. I switched to more of teas, matcha, mud water, because I had a theory. And even though I really enjoy the high of coffee in the morning, I did not enjoy the afternoon crash. And I was curious about how my sleep would change if I stopped drinking it. So I gave myself a timeline. I said, for 2 months, I'm going to stop drinking coffee. I'm going to, journal about how I feel every day, the quality of my sleep. And I use a sleep tracker that helps me understand the amount of time I get in REM sleep and deep sleep. And based off of that, at the end of 2 months, I was able to make a conclusion that I actually am getting higher quality sleep when I do not drink as much caffeine in a day. I do not have the mid-afternoon crash. And although I do miss that high in the morning, overall, my energy levels are just more baseline, and that's okay. We don't need, and I think we've talked about this on my podcast or earlier today, where it's not all about the highs. At some points, you just want a high baseline, a good level of contentness. So, experiment with yourself to see what as a whole, and again, I would challenge you to quantify things, because then you can actually see if things are working or not working and reflect back on where you were in past times, but see your progress. And sometimes all it takes to get into a better place is reflect on where you were a year ago. And even though you may be having a tough day, to be able to say, this tough day isn't nearly as tough as the day I was having a year ago, and that in itself is progress. That makes me feel good about myself. Life is good.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that 100%, and very well said. And self-actualization, I love that you use that word. It's the best term I found to describe this journey that I'm on. Can you elaborate a bit more? What is self-actualization, and why is it so important for men like our listeners to pursue,
Yeah. So self-actualization is the journey I'm on as well. And maybe it is the journey that we're all supposed to be on. But I look at self-actualization as becoming all that we are meant to be. And you could make an argument, depending on your beliefs, that we all have some type of purpose, some type of reason we're here. And the journey of self-actualization is kind of figuring out what that is. And it comes through asking yourself a lot of questions and being very curious about, why am I here? What am I good at? Again, yes, earlier we definitely reflected on our weakest links to mitigate our happiness, but self-actualization actually comes from focusing on your strongest links, which is, what is my superpower? What is that thing that I can really add to this world? And I actually remember speaking to a competitive triathlete, and he was thinking about what he should focus on in order to become the best version of himself as a triathlete. And he was, let's say, a 3 at swimming, a 6 at biking, and an 8 at running. And he talked to his coach and he was like, how can I get from a 3 to a 5, a 3 to a 6 in swimming? And the coach says, why do you want to do that? You know, if you're a 6, and an 8, you're above average, but you're still in the average range. If you're a 3, a 5, and we work on your running and get you to a 10, you are an exceptional runner. You have something to offer to everyone else because you can teach them all how to be the best. You have a gift to the world. So again, this is in the physical realm, but that can be in any realm. You know, Sean, maybe your superpower is your ability to connect with people, your ability to bring people together, your ability to be authentic. You know, you probably have been trying to dive deep into that over your journey of self-actualization. But I think that once we get to a baseline level of happiness that might be a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 or more, we're no longer in survival mode. We're no longer just trying to make it to the next day and you know, do the minimum in life. We actually get to a point where life is more than that. Life is about what was I meant to do? And you've probably realized once you're at a 7 or 8 out of 10 that life is far more fulfilling when you are doing those challenging things and when you are growing. So you begin questioning, where do I want to grow in? What do I want to grow in? And maybe honestly, it also helps to think about, where do I enter that state of flow? Where do my interests meet the right amount of challenge? And dive really, really deep into that. Work hard at that every day until you find that thing that really speaks to your soul and lights people up. Another thing that I recommend on the self-actualization journey, if you don't even know where to begin, is start thinking about what energizes you. You know, go through your day. Who do you have conversations with? And after you feel depleted versus who do you have a conversation with them and feel super energized? If you feel energized after talking to someone, keep on talking to them, because that is your inner being telling you that you're on the right track. You know, you could make an argument that we're all just a bunch of energy. And there are baselines to feel our energy, and that, like, if you're not eating well, if you're not getting any sleep, it's going to be very tough to even tap into it all, what your energy is trying to tell you. But when you are at that baseline happiness, baseline fitness, you know, that, again, that 7 or 8 out of 10, you can start reading the room and know that, oh, wow, I do feel a lot better after I have a conversation with this person, so I want to hang out with them more. I do feel a lot better after I see my therapist or go to a men's group, so I want to do that more. I do feel a lot better after I go surfing. I need to keep on doing that. And somehow life just unfolds in a way that when you're doing the things that energize you, you become more. You become more, and you realize what life holds for you, and you become freed from the reins of society to become whatever and whoever you want to be.
Yeah, I agree. In my experience, it's been interesting because by doubling down on what I'm good at, which you nailed it, like people say I'm genuine. I get people to open up easy. I probably should have been a counselor or something like that. And so if I continue to build those skills and like it's not even build those skills, it's like build my life around those skills, like leverage them more. And then as part of that is on that self-actualization journey for me, I've realized that, oh, these things I'm weak at, I need to polish those up a little bit because they're holding me back from really excelling up here with my strength. So all of a sudden, everything starts to get raised up. And then in that, my contentment, my happiness automatically raises as a byproduct. So by like pursuing this goal of self-actualization, being the best version of myself in like a grounded marathon-y long-term kind of way, not like an angsty I need to do everything today kind of way, then it really does seem to make me a lot happier. So I think you're bang on there, Brian. One follow-up question. You said, you know, people need to find things that they like, that they find that they're engaging, that they can be passionate about. I've always never had a hard time with that. I've been really fortunate that I've always had too many passions for the time that I have. But the majority of people that I see in MensGroup and other places, they don't have a lot of passions. And I think people are more and more getting pushed away from listening to themselves and their bodies and just going along with social media and distractions like that. What can you recommend for people who want to find you know, the things they could find engaging, they could work towards that would help them become happier and self-actualize and all these things.
Absolutely. So I agree with you that society is a tough place these days where we tend to lose our identities as we age and adopt the identities of our workplace or of social media,
Yes.
where, you lose your hobbies and your hobby becomes I'm an accountant. And then you retire and you freak out because all you know is that you're an accountant. You don't know that you're all these other things. So, to start, I would do a little bit of reflecting or journaling on what did you love to do when you were a kid? And I remember in my first year in New York City, I was working in accounting. That was my first job out of college. And I was spending hours a day in Excel. I really didn't have a creative outlet. And I felt like a need to do something that made me feel a little bit more alive and released my creative being. And I signed up for a creative painting class.
Yep.
And part of my incentive was absolutely to meet girls in New York City. The class ended up being all women in their 50s and 60s, so it didn't work quite as planned. Although they were great in giving me tips on how to be the best possible painter, but it just gave me the space to experiment and to try something different and have a creative outlet. And no, I'm not a professional painter anymore, but it was an experiment and it got me closer to saying, I enjoy giving myself the space and time to release my mind, to, be in a different thought process than focused on Excel. And that was the beginning of my journey, which led me to writing now, where I really do love making my blog posts and journaling. And, I'd love to write a book one day. So it's really just think about what you enjoyed when you were young, anything you've ever enjoyed in life. But especially when you were young, because the younger you are, the less likely you've been influenced by the default path. And when I say the default path, I mean what we're supposed to do. And we're supposed to be doctors, lawyers, and accountants,
Totally.
So, think about who you were at a young age. What did you enjoy? Maybe it was surfing. Maybe it was painting. Maybe it was golfing. Maybe it's, again, just having conversations with people. And I can tell you that I was the guy at parties who was literally having meaningful conversations with people while everyone else was talking about the sports game, So, maybe that's what you just need to be doing more of and finding opportunities to do that. But yeah, start. I guess my number one piece of advice is start doing and stop thinking, because the more time you spend in your mind, the more you're not going to be present. The more you're just, in that place of spinning and in that place of, one day I could be happy if I did all this. Do that. Take this first step.
Start doing that stuff. Yeah, for me, it's like I got into a period of my life where I kind of lost passions there for a little bit. And what was helpful for me is a friend suggested, actually a guy from my men's group suggested, that inner voice, that inner compass we all have, it might have gone quiet because you've been ignoring it for so long, because you've been paying too much attention to your neighbors and your friends and what they think about the world and society and all these things. But if you start paying attention to those little bursts of excitement, those little flare-ups, just the little increase in energy, maybe it's when you see a surfer magazine on the rack. Maybe it's you see a cooking video on YouTube, or you're walking through a store and you feel drawn to a certain section. Like those little impulses, those little signs are what can lead to these things, because usually they're there for a very good reason. And the surfing for me is a good example, actually, just quickly to follow up on this. Like a lot of people look at surfing and they're like, it's kind of immature, you're just going out and playing. Oh, he's an adrenaline junkie. But for me, looking back on why surfing's so important to me, the only place I really connected with my dad and saw him truly happy was in the ocean, right? And so my whole life, I went and did the DJ thing. I lived in city centers, like downtown cores. I traveled to big cities. I was in the business world for a while, and it didn't really feel like authentically me. And whenever I'd be walking through my life, I'd see the picture of a surfer on a wave in like a window or something, and I just feel this subtle longing. And there's a really good reason why, right? And so listen to those things, follow them. If you want to Google, if you're curious about trains, I don't know, start researching trains. Like, you never know where it could go. Yeah, just follow those little, get started. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you touched on, that like little spark of energy, I think that a lot of people have defined that as our intuition. And our intuition kind of knows what journey we're supposed to be on, and it's constantly giving us these hints, as you mentioned. It's just a matter of, are you willing to listen to those hints, even if they don't align with who you think you are now or who you want your friends to think you are? So being able to say, this is what feels right, I'm going to do it regardless of what the repercussions might be, and see where this journey will take me. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense, by the way.
No, I was just chatting about this with a friend in another men's group where he said the best decisions he's ever made didn't make logical sense at the time. They only made emotional sense. And I've done that too. And looking back, you can't connect the dots moving forward. Looking back, those decisions I made to just pick up and leave and move to Mexico in 2 weeks, or to go back to Mexico in the middle of when I was being sick so I could recover in the sun, or trying a sport even though I didn't really have the money for it or whatever. Like, those are the best things I've ever done for myself and have led to me the most happiness. Yeah. One question for you, Brian, because we have a lot of guys coming into men's group who are about to go through a breakup, or they're going through breakups or nasty divorces. And you see this in women too, where they come out of these relationships, they've been hurt quite badly, and rightly so. They feel hurt, and they're bitter, and they're like, I don't need a relationship. And you see this in the in men's group anyways. We don't attract a lot of these guys, but I see them. I see guys commenting on our YouTube videos and stuff that are like very into red pill and men going their own way, and all these different groups of men that have basically just written off women. And you've seen the same thing with I guess more extreme feminists as well. And they preach that they don't need a relationship, that that's too much for them. They don't need that kind of a thing. I'm curious to know what you have seen as far as the importance of intimacy, and most importantly, a romantic relationship on happiness.
Yeah. So I guess to take a quick step back to, you said people are bitter. Mm-hmm. That is an emotion that doesn't do a lot for us in a positive way. And if that's what you're feeling, it's okay, and acknowledge that. But by feeling bitter at someone else, you're letting them win. You're letting someone else who made you angry control you. They have power over you, even though you're not even in a relationship with them anymore. So to be the bigger person, to be the best version of yourself, no matter what other people to you, lead with light. Feel compassion for that other person, and be able to say, even though they wronged me or they did this terrible thing, it's probably because of unfortunate circumstances that happened to them over their lives, which I might not be aware of, but I feel sorry for them. I feel compassionate for them. And I hope that whatever compelled them to a given situation, I hope that they can get better, and if you can lead with that light, you're going to feel a lot better as a whole. So I guess step one in addressing those situations is just reframe the way you look at the other person. And even though it's very likely that you never want to see them again, and that's okay, don't hold a grudge the rest of your life, because that's just going to bring you down. And this is your life. Do what makes you happy. Don't let other people control you. You are the only person that should be controlling you. And then I guess the next layer is, what is the value of relationships? So relationships are the number one predictor of happiness in our lives. That's a fact. That's proven. That's science.
It's not your opinion. That's research. Yeah.
That's research. Yeah. And, there's been studies on, over the years, the Scandinavian countries tend to be the happiest countries in the world. What is something that stands out in those countries that is different from other countries is that over 90% of people are involved in some type of recurring clubs. And that club could be through religion. It could be a running club. It could be through anything, a book club, whatever. But the fact that you feel like you're a part of a community and you have people that you can be, again, authentic around, real around, and expose yourself to, having built-in community and relationships is such an important thing. So, that's why MensGroup, in my opinion, is an incredible organization, because you're providing community for so many people who might not have that where they are right now, including you, Sean, who kind of you were so, I'm grateful that you were so vulnerable and sharing that in your new city, you're looking for new friends, and those friends will come if you put yourself out there. But luckily, in the meantime, you have MensGroup, where you have so many people that do care about you and will, embrace you with whatever you have to say and respond with, light, but respond with the light, respond with love, having a single companion, a significant other, is a beautiful thing. To have one person that you can trust with anything adds a ton of just ease in your life. The purpose of a relationship is not to complete each other. It's to help each other grow along the journey. So having someone to challenge you, to call you out, to let you know when you're not being the best version of yourself. Because again, when we're in tough places, sometimes we don't know what to do, but if other people know you, they can be that journal for you. They can be that sounding board that can help you get back to that point of thriving. Because life is really it's a journey of filling the time over the years, and having someone to share those years with you is an incredible concept. But make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Make sure you're doing it because it's part of your self-actualization journey and part of your journey to become the best version of yourself. And oftentimes other people do bring out the best in us and teach us things that we could never learn about ourselves alone.
Yeah, I agree. And just even self-actualization, becoming the best version of yourself aside, it seems like all the research that I've seen shows that like having a healthy romantic partner is a recipe for happiness. Like the one study, the Harvard study of adult development, where they followed like boys for 80 years ago until some of them died now, and they really studied their whole lives, and they had them check in every month for 80 years, not 90 years now, I think. Mm-hmm. And the number one factor in whether somebody was happy and successful was their intimate relationship, their romantic relationship. And then second to that, their friendships, their community. Yeah.
Right. A big part of happiness is also giving to others, realizing that life isn't all about us. And because the more we do for others, the more we're actually doing for ourselves. Giving to others is giving to ourselves. So within that, when you have a relationship and you want to do anything you can to make them happy, it takes you out of your own headspace a bit. It takes you out of this, what's wrong with me? And is more of, what can I do for others? And there are also tons of studies that have shown that the more charity we give, the more the community service we give, the more we do for others, the happier we're going to be. So having someone in our lives, and both our romantically and our friends, to do for others makes life just that much more fulfilling as well.
Yeah, even just sharing little experiences, I find that's a huge value of mine and many people. It's like the contribution for sure, but also even just sharing a dog walk with somebody can be so enjoyable. And when we're in these down places where we're upset and hurt, it's easy to isolate ourselves off. And again, society makes it easy to do with all the distractions we can find at home and stuff, and we easily forget, how good it can be to just go for a walk with a friend.
Yeah. I mean, again, we're tribal creatures. It wasn't until the last 500 years of the Industrial Revolution and then the Tech Revolution that we've built these isolated lives for ourselves. Whether we built it or it just happened is another conversation. But we are meant to be a part of a pack. We're meant to help every member of our pack survive. And, we all have our roles where some people are the hunters and gatherers. Some people are building the campfire and building our site, so everyone is contributing to help each other succeed. And it's really, as humans, our nature is that it's all about shared success. What can I do that grows the pie for the tribe and makes everyone succeed? Yet somehow life became competitive in the last few hundred years. And it's not about how can we grow the pie. It's about how can I have the biggest piece of the pie. And that's just, it's not healthy. So the more we can see value out of doing for others and taking care of each other, that's what life is all about. None of us are in an individual journey. This is a team effort, us as humans.
Yeah, 100%. And, I think it's an important point to be noted. You just said for the last couple hundred years, Western society alone, Western society, you go to other cultures like Latin America, you go to, you go to Asia, places like India, it's like community's huge, and it's a very Western thing to be individualistic. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is that evolution takes a long time. It happens in creatures evolve in tens of thousands of years, if not more. And so for millions of years, like humans, 2 million years, they think it goes back to, we lived in tribes and we had to work together or else we would die. And to think that you all of a sudden can bypass that hardwiring because you're an intelligent human, it's short-sighted. We've only been doing this individualistic thing for 300, 400, 200 years now, so I that's a great point, is we're actually made, I don't think people understand how much history we have working together, being together, sharing every moment of our lives with the people around us, and that creates the foundation for why this is so important.
Right. It's crazy that we spend hours and hours of our days on social media or staring at screens alone. And that's this is all things that developed in the last 100 years. We as humans have been around for thousands, if not millions of years. We have not adapted. Our brains are always just looking for the dopamine hits because that was what we needed to survive back in the day. But we're not being threatened by lions anymore. We're not, worried about, so even just with sugar, for example, we love sugar because sugar provided the energy we needed to survive back in the day, to get that quick hit so we could run or whatever. And so that is something that just speaks to our palates so much. But now sugar is everywhere. We have all this processed food. We have all these, and it's so easy to get that naturally we still want it so badly, but it's because of our innate survival skills. It's not because we actually need it anymore, because there's nothing threatening us except the fact, like now it's obesity is threatening us, So it's a different kind of lion.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, which is even a scarier line because it's an internal line. And we're not given the tools, or the society's not encouraging us to address the things that are making us obese, which is loneliness and emotional issues and all these things. Yeah, fantastic. Well, I really love how you think about this stuff, Brian, and I love how mature and grounded you are in making distinctions between pleasure and happiness, and the chasing pleasure and all these things. And I want to encourage everybody listening to access tools, not just the MensGroup, but coaching has been one of the most phenomenal tools for me as a man working with people like Brian. So if you liked what Brian had to say today, how he talks about this resonates with you, reach out to him. Brian, where can people reach out to you through? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So I have the website hitofhappiness.com. There's a link to contact me through that, or email me at brian@hitofhappiness.com. If you like what I had to say, you may enjoy my blog, my podcast, and other content. We're on Instagram as well. So, but absolutely happy to have a conversation with anyone listening, and just know that wherever you are right now mentally, there is always a path forward. You are never hopeless. There is always a way to get back in motion. And sometimes it takes help from a friend. Sometimes, it's a conversation with Sean. It's a conversation with a men's group. But there is always a path forward. And when you start questioning life, when you start engaging with your life more, when you start taking care of yourself, and when you start doing the things that make you happy, your life will change dramatically. So I would urge everyone to start living that life and self-actualizing on the way.
Yeah, and reach out to Brian because man, this has been great. I've really enjoyed the chat. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, and thank you to you, Sean. As I've mentioned throughout this pod, I just appreciate how real you are, and everyone at MensGroup is lucky to have you as their fearless leader.
Thanks, man. I can't help it. It's kind of like a disease, It's the only thing I know how to do. So I don't know what I'd be doing.
I feel you.
Yeah, totally. Okay, man. Well, we'll talk to you soon, and hopefully we can have you back on the men's group for like an AMA or something. Get you interacting with the community more at some point. That'd be nice.
I'd be happy to. That sounds great, Sean. Thanks.